Then in the training peaks, they have a very, what do you call that, Matt?
Metrics.
The metrics that are real important to sort of keep track of. Overtraining syndrome is really a systemic overuse injury. It's not really particular to any particular body part. And really, the training program now has overwhelmed the athlete. And they're unable to physically and mentally adjust to the strain. So they can't recover from the strain and fatigue of the training. Next slide. Usually the symptoms are decreased performance, generalized fatigue, mood disturbance. I know it's hard without Tracy because she's all over the place with mood and everything. So maybe she's an overtraining syndrome at the time. But anyway, they have heavy legs. They seem to have a different injury all the time, you know, or sickly, having like, I don't want to say flu-like symptoms, but it can be. It can be just like a not feeling well. And these symptoms even persist after 2 weeks of rest. You think you've gotten enough rest and should be okay. So those are hallmarks of this. They just did not get better or do not feel better after a couple weeks off. Next slide. There used to be the thought that one of the early symptoms was elevated baseline heart rate. But prospective studies show that that's not really an accurate test for that. There's no serial markers. In other words, I can't draw blood and look at C-reactive protein or CPR or anything like that to help me diagnose it with a lab test. Obviously, other medical causes for fatigue, in other words, iron deficiency, vitamin deficiencies, all that should be ruled out. Thyroid. Those are other medical conditions that sort of can cause fatigue or excess fatigue. But one of the hallmarks to be able to really diagnose this is that one thing that with the trained athlete or coach athlete is they usually have a baseline test or exercise. And what they find is that when they compare their current performance with a baseline test or that there's a decrement in their performance. Okay? And unfortunately, really the guide is really several weeks to months of rest. And you gradually return them back to their training. Next slide. Okay. Can injuries be prevented? And that's yes, it can. No pain, no gain does not really apply here. The 10% rule is very helpful, and that applies to mileage, pace, lifting weights, or anything, strength training program. And if you think you have a problem, really seeking the advice or getting seen by a sports physician. Because you want to prevent it from being a chronic problem or recurring problem. If you get in there and shit right the first time, the success is very good at keeping this problem under control. And I think that was the last slide. Lights, please.
All right, can I ask you
I know there's a lot of information I put up there. Yes, sir.
I've got a couple of questions
Yeah.
for you. One, we have some of our triathletes that come out of school backgrounds. Let me use Ryan as an example because he's a very good example. Very good swimmer, big aerobic engine, takes up triathlon, and he's been pretty chronically injured with running. And one of the things we realize with our swimmers is they don't have the tendon, joint, ligament strength that run back. How long does it take to develop that strength? And in my experience, it's been over a year, and transitioning a swimmer to being a runner,
that's exactly
a slow
why.
process.
Mainly because swimming is really a non-load-bearing type of activity or sport. So they do not have, and this kind of goes back to I talked about in my stress fracture lecture, that vascular structures will respond quicker. In other words, the heart pulmonary system will respond in a couple of weeks to a training regimen. Tendon and ligaments take months. Bone, tendons are the next vascular structure, muscle and tendons. So that'll take months, but then when you look at the ligaments and bone, that would take several months, almost up to a year. And unfortunately, like you said, swimmers are great aerobic, very fit.
Big engines and
but unfortunately their bony or musculoskeletal system is far behind than someone who's been like a runner or a football player, or let's not say football, but let's say a runner or a cyclist, where they actually have some load. So that's really the issue or problem that you're looking at. They also tend to be very mobile. The foot and ankles are very, they have to point their toes, and so they're very, very flexible in that area, which may not be helpful for the, you know, running. So you're trying to, you know, back in the 80s when they were making football players take ballet and do this super stretching, they actually found that injuries actually were on the rise. So they kind of eliminated that, you know, took that out of the training program. But anyway, I think that's the main reason, is because they don't have the years of developing that skeletal system, and that's what takes the longest to adapt.
My second question for you, I was having this kind of a debate with one of my athletes the other day, and athletes always want to keep moving. You know,
right.
After races, we tend to give them rest periods, and in the past, we hadn't really given rest periods, but you know, racing is the most stressful work to do, and there's a lot of breakdown with that, and you know, tendons and whatnot. How long do those tendons take to heal? And in this demographic, not necessarily on a master's level, I said, you know, taking a couple of weeks off from running in particular, right, maintaining maybe a swim and bike volume.
Well, how I would really approach an athlete who you have to take time off is that, first of all, if you get in and treat it right the first time, then the likelihood of it coming back is going to be almost zero. Okay, you remember when I had bad plantar fasciitis to the point. Well, we stopped, I wore boots and did all that stuff, and I haven't had a problem with that, you know, since. So, you know, I'm a testament to the fact that you got in there, you treated it, you got off. The other thing I would also tell athletes that you can go for a lot longer without training than you really, really think. The muscle memory cells, what we found is that even though you may be on a prolonged period of rest, those muscle cells actually have a genetic change that allows them to recondition a lot faster than you did when you're just starting out. So they have some type of genetic memory. Even though they may shrink or get smaller, they're still there. And the gene fiber is almost like it knows what it needs to do. So it allows the athlete really to recover or, retrain a lot quicker than, like I said, than if they're starting at ground zero, never trained before. So that's been proven and shown. So that's what also I would encourage, that they're not going to lose that, you know, that much.
Even if they think they're going to lose it after.
Even if they think they're right, yeah. So it really takes a lot of time to really truly decondition. But all the research shows that they really ramp up quite quickly. But you know, really, if you get in and correct the problem or treat it adequately first, then you more than likely can eliminate the problem, you know. But I know that I have a young daughter who's just starting in cross country, and you know, they have the kids running, and what I really found really interesting is how little time they really spend on run technique. I didn't start running until I was 48 years old, and I didn't know what to do. So just like when I
pick it up nicely.
Well, what I did was I studied how to run. I didn't know how to swim, so I studied and learned how to do it. So I was more concerned about getting the right technique before running. So I didn't have this, I'm going to run cross country in high school because I'm fit enough to do it. I studied how to run first, and then got the fitness later. But I'm really stunned, really, to be honest with you, at how little the coaches that I've seen spend just on, this is how you're supposed to run. This is wrong with your technique. And I probably would hesitate to guess if anyone who ran high school cross country ever even got videotaped by their coach, you know, to really look at that.
No, what I've always noticed is when I get a runner in here and they've run in a organized collegiate program, you can recognize them like that, because that's the first time in their life, in all likelihood, they got any sort of formal coaching in running technique or whatnot, and somebody actually started. But until they get to that level, there's very little time spent on technique.
And so lucky for me, I didn't run as a youth, and really had to take time to learn how to run or be more efficient.
You don't have to wear miles on your body either.
Pardon me?
You haven't accumulated all the overuse injuries over the years.
I'm running before them either.
Yeah.
Any other questions or anything? Yes.
I have a about hydration. You know, we talk about hydration.
Yeah.
We talk about hydration before races, and generally just throughout training and stuff like that.
What do you think is the biggest problem with hydration? What do you think is the biggest risk?
I was thinking overhydrating.
Yeah, exactly. Oh well, overhydration with hypotonic fluids. In other words, overhydrating with water. That's almost like say if you come through the finish line and you didn't hydrate enough, the medical staff, or people there, they can treat that in 30 minutes with an IV. Overhydrating water, however, you need to go to the hospital because the hyponatremia can set off a cascade event. What can happen is that they can give you like half normal saline. That's only worsening the problem right there at the event, and it almost can make you even more severely dehydrated by doing that. So that's the real big difference, is that one's a medical urgency, and you need to go to the hospital to treat. I think the most valuable test I ever did was to do a pre and post exercise sweat test. I was amazed at how much I lost. I took the scale right to Green Creek Parkway, got in the bushes, and took all my clothes off. But anyway, you don't even have to really take off your, but anyway. But I was amazed at how much I lost in that hour run. I was really stunned. I think that's a valuable test because everyone loses water differently. You know, I think that with hydration, it starts long before the race has started. You know, because you guys are training. You know, so I look at hydration starting a couple of weeks before the event even comes, and paying attention to it, you know, while you're doing your training.
On that note, one of the tests that we do here is a urine specific gravity test. It's a very simple test. Basically, what we're doing is we're weighing your urine to see the weight of the solids in the urine. And that's what the test they use at the Olympic Training Center to indicate you know, dehydration. So sometimes with our Ironman athletes and whatnot, we do that test leading up to the week of the event just to make sure that they're adequately hydrated. So lots of athletes are just chronically dehydrated.
Right, exactly. And that's what I was leading to, that they're chronically dehydrated. But the greatest risk really is and the greatest problem is over drinking just water, you know, on the long, you know, with your longer activities.
Do you think that dehydration can cause muscle strains? Like
not really. It'll cause cramping, but not necessarily strains. You know, really, when you get dehydrated, a lot of things can happen. Your performance gets lower, your technique gets bad. So, you know, I can say yes or no for that. But that's more of a fatigue problem. You get fatigued quicker. You know.
So what are some signs of both of those? Like, for instance, if you're overhydrated leading a race, you know, what are signs of that? And also, what are signs of dehydration leading into a race?
Well, I mean, you know, that's a very good question. Some of the signs for, you know, overhydration really are more cognitive. You know, you start to have some mental status changes. Your body temperature actually goes down. Okay. So you become, you know, your body temperature actually lowers. You get cold. When you feel cold, you get, you'll feel clammy. You know what I mean? So it's almost like your body, how can I say it? The thermostat has totally, the hypothalamus has either shut down or just reversed itself. So instead of feeling warm, you actually will feel cold. That's the biggest thing I would tell people is, you know, how to tell the difference. So that's what usually the medical personnel, they know to look for that, and that's one of the first things that they're looking for. This cold, clammy, disoriented, you know, person. Obviously, heat exhaustion is a little bit different because their body temperature actually will rise. So that's really the hallmark of a physical exam finding that we're looking for. Okay.
And so leading a race, you would avoid. I mean, you would recommend to stay away from just water.
Oh yeah. If you're doing a long event, you have to replace with your fluids with electrolytes and sugars. You know what I mean? We have some sugar in there. Or
most of our athletes that are in this room, with the exception of I know a few others, are focused on short course racing.
Right. Yeah. So that's not going to be a problem. Consideration. Yeah. With short course, I mean, this is really just over Ironman distances. You know, very rarely going to see this in like a 70.3 or something like that. You just don't have enough time to drink, you know, that much, you know, in short course and stuff like that.
It's usually more common in less conditioned athletes. We did have an athlete a few years ago that did his first Ironman and ended up in the ICU, and he actually was mistreated. Flushed him with IV fluids, and he almost died.
I mean, that's a very good